You're listening to LeaderTribe, where leaders are made daily, but never in a day. We're talking skills that are relevant, researched, and ready for action. Apply these and you will grow. Here's your daily dose of growth with Dr. Rob McClelland.
Hello, LeaderTribers. Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Daily Dose of Growth podcast. So glad that you are with us. Let me tell you what happens on Monday through Friday. We do short segments called Your Daily Dose of Growth. Those are always going to be 5 to 10 minutes long. I don't think we've had any that are longer than 10. I think the shortest one we've done so far is about 6 minutes. Those are just little daily snippets. But then on Saturday, we put all of those together. And so if somebody wants to listen to an entire week's worth of podcast, that you can do that on a Saturday. We just put it all together for you. So that's what you're about to hear. I hope you enjoy it. This is the previous week's versions of the Daily Dose of Growth podcast. Much love and have a great weekend. Hello, LeaderTribers, and welcome to episode number 1. What? That's what I'm talking about. It is so great to be with you. I've had this project on my heart for a couple of years now. If you don't know about me, you can jump over and listen to episode 000. In a lot of podcasts, they'll have episode 000, and that's just sort of an introductory episode. In there, I go into my life and my background. I try to be really vulnerable and self-disclosing, kind of helping you understand how I got on this leadership journey to start with, eventually ending up teaching MBA classes and getting a PhD in organizational leadership. And the reason is I'm passionate about this. I love this stuff. To me, it's not an academic exercise. It's something that I can learn from and apply in my life every single day. And that's what I'm hoping this podcast will turn into for you. Again, it's called Your Daily Dose of Growth because we're breaking it down into really fun, bite-sized pieces, something that you can apply a little bit every day. And if you're listening to it heading into work or you want to discuss it around the dinner table, you'll be able to know that this is true research. This isn't anecdotal. It's not just somebody's opinion, because everything we do, I don't know if you listen to the music at the beginning of the podcast, a little wiki, a little old school, little fun stuff there, but it says where everything that we're going to do is relevant, researched, and ready for action. And that is true. You don't believe me? Let's jump in right now. Episode number 1. Here we go. What great CEOs do differently. Well, that was the title of a Harvard Business Review article in the May-June 2017 edition of Harvard Business Review. And all God's people said, who cares? I'm not a CEO. I'm not a great CEO. I don't run a great company. That's why this research was so incredible. It was written because they wanted to discover why so many CEOs were losing their jobs. About 25% of Fortune 500 CEOs over the last decade, when they had left the company, they had left involuntarily. That means they got their rear end fired. They were shown the door. 25%. Can you imagine that? These are the biggest and best companies in the world, and they're getting it wrong 25% of the time. So they wanted to find out why. And what they did is they did a 10-year longitudinal study. And so over 10 years, they started to discover that the criteria they were using to hire the people were not necessarily the same criteria that would prove that they would do a great job later on. As a matter of fact, the criteria that they were using to hire people, it was things like this. If the person was gregarious and outgoing, and if they acted overly confident, there was a better chance they would be hired as a CEO. But guess what? None of that actually helped them to run the company. The reason they discovered that is because after 10 years of study, they could look at the companies that were overperforming, the ones that were crushing it, the ones that were doing great. They took the top 10% and they said, what is it that these guys are doing right? And so they have people rate them in a whole lot of different areas. And what they saw is in the ones who get it right, there was 4 things that happened over and over and over again. And so what they said is, hey, our most important discovery was that successful people tend to demonstrate 4 specific behaviors that prove critical to their performance. Well, I looked at all of those behaviors, and the very first thing I thought of is Hey, this isn't for CEOs. This is for everybody. None of this is rocket science. It's something that I could apply in my life every day, and the people that I'm with could apply in their lives. It's for you. It's for your friends. It's for your family members. It's for your colleagues. And so I wanted to start off with that study very first. A couple more things about the study that you're going to find fascinating. Number one, was that when they looked at the education of these top performing CEOs, I mean, these are the CEOs of the best, right? And so percentage of those guys who have, or guys, okay, real quick little disclaimer here. I'm from Northern California. If I see a group of ladies and gentlemen together hanging out talking, I'll walk up and say, hey guys, what's happening? So guys is a generic term to me. If that offends you, I'm very sorry. I apologize in advance, but no harm, no foul meant on that one. So when they studied these guys, these people, these ladies and gentlemen at the top of these organizations, one of the things that they really wanted to do is to say, what kind of educational background do they have? And how many of them had that elite Ivy League education? Now, if you asked me, Rob, out of all of the Fortune 500, the ones that are the top 10%, the CEOs of those companies, what percentage of them would have an Ivy League degree? I'd go, I don't know, probably 30, 40%. Here's the answer. You ready? 7%, only 7%. And here is the mind blower. I mean, this is truly a mind blower. 8% of them have no college education degree at all. They don't even have a college degree. And so the very first thing that you and I can learn out of this is that it's not about having some highfalutin education and coming from the right school. It's about, can you continue to learn every single day? Can you learn from your past mistakes? Can you keep moving forward? Can you make the right types of decisions? And can you take these 4 behaviors and make sure that they become a daily part of your life? Wasn't that an interesting discovery? Hey, here's something else they discovered. You think, well, Rob, you know what? I'd love to be successful, but I really can't because I've had some huge failures in my life, some things I'm not proud of, some, just kind of almost career ending type of things. Well, guess what? Welcome to the team. Welcome to being a human being. Because what they discovered is out of all of the people who were crushing it as CEOs, that about half of them had one of those almost career-ending mistakes. They had been fired from previous jobs. They had lost companies a lot of money. But the ones who could get over that and could continue to grow, who could take that and learn to, as John Maxwell would say, fail forward, to learn from their mistakes and to keep going, those were the ones who were ultimately the most effective. And to just reiterate a point that I made earlier, they really thought that the most effective CEOs would be sort of those people who were charismatic extroverts. But it ends up that the introverts were slightly more effective in leading the larger companies. Isn't that interesting? It's not about getting out there in front and looking like you have it all together. It's about these 4 decisions that you make in your life, and you just continue to excel at these 4 behaviors every single day. So are you interested? Do you know what those 4 behaviors are? Well, if you need to know, then tune in tomorrow for... No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you, not on episode number 1. Hey, I will break these down over the next 4 days. We're going to take each day and we'll talk about what the behavior is and how we can get it into our own lives. I'll even have some things. That's a really educated sounding word. I'll have some opportunities for you to download some resources that will help you apply these in your own lives. Little worksheets that I've come up with and made for you so that you can not only hear these things, but say, if I want to apply that, what would that take? And so you can have that resource. You can use it with friends or family members as well. That's all just part of my gift here from LeaderTribe. But let's go ahead and talk about number 1. I'll just tell you what it is. We won't get into it. But the very first thing that they discovered for those CEOs is that the ones who were the best were ones who were decisive. They could decide a matter with speed and conviction. And you're like, well, yeah, because they're really smart. No. Check this out. And here's the mind-blowing part. Here's where we'll pick it up again tomorrow. They would rather make a bad decision than no decision. What? What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? They'd rather make a bad decision? Yeah, you know why? Because if you make a bad decision, you can do something about it. But a no decision slows everyone down and you still don't know if it's going to be right. Hey, we're going to look at that and a whole lot more over the next couple of days. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you could do me one other favor, it'd be super meaningful. Jump over to iTunes and just subscribe to the LeaderTribe podcast. If you would do that, wow, that would be tremendous. Why? Because if you will subscribe to the podcast and then leave an honest review, here's what happens. It starts to make its way up in iTunes, and then they give it more exposure, and we can help more people in their personal leadership journeys. Those people who want to grow, we can provide a way for them to do that, a little teeny bit every day. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. Much love. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow and to joining you as you continue your own leadership journey. Hello, Leader Tribers. Welcome to episode number 2. I am, in fact, Dr. Rob. So glad to be along with you on this journey. Hey, we've only got 5 to 10 minutes together every day, so buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. We're looking at a 10-year-long study, and we're actually not looking at the study. We're looking at the results of the study. But it's so fascinating what they found. The study was done on people who are leading big companies, and they see that 25% of the people who stepped down over that decade, they were actually fired. When they stepped down, it's because they had to. They didn't have any other choice. Well, it was the boards of directors of Fortune 500 companies hiring these people. So some really smart people, but they were getting it wrong a quarter of the time. So they thought, why is that? What is it? What's going wrong? How do those people act differently than the people who are at the top? And so they compared two groups. The top 10%, these were people who were crushing it, ladies and gentlemen who were just making the results happen over and over and over again, versus the people who couldn't make it happen, and so they were shown the door. What they learned is there were 4 behaviors that the people at the top showed, and they do it every day. And then I come to you saying, hey, guess what? It's not for just leaders of companies. These are 4 basic behaviors for all human beings, places where we can each begin to learn to do better. And so I announced the study and how they did the study yesterday, some of the really interesting discoveries that they found, like there's more people with no college education leading these great companies than there are with Ivy League educations. And so some of those things that help us formulate excuses in our mind. I spoke to those yesterday. You can go back and listen to episode 1 if you want to hear more of those. But hey, no excuses, take no prisoners. Let's jump in. We're looking at the first one of the 4 behaviors today, and that is being decisive. Being decisive. Now, one of the things that were so interesting in the article when they're looking at those who were decisive is that here's a quote. In our data, people who were described as decisive were 12 times more likely to be high-performing CEOs. 12 times more likely than the people who were not decisive and the ones who ended up being shown the door. So what happened, though, is they start looking at this and they say, the highest IQ executives that they worked with are the smartest people. Hey, do you fancy yourself as, hey, I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm smarter than the average person out there. The people who thought they were really smart, well, guess what? They really struggled in this area. Isn't that interesting? They struggled in this area because they were used to really kind of pursuing the perfect answer and trying to think through all of the different ways that this could go and getting more research because they had a high capacity to do that. But guess what? That kept them from setting clear priorities and getting on with it. And so if you're a smart person, be warned, if you try to over-intellectualize most decisions, you're going to end up hurting yourself in the long run because you slow the process down. As a matter of fact, they said that the smart but slow decision makers become bottlenecks, and their teams either grow frustrated or the teams become overcautious themselves because they want to be liked by the CEO. In both cases, the results were not what they had hoped for. So, hey, here's something else that we learned, and I mentioned it yesterday. It's the real mind blower to me of the research, and that was the CEOs who were the very best, they would rather make a bad decision than no decision. What? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding. They would rather make a bad decision. How can you say that? Hey, Rob, in the study, didn't some of those guys who get fired because they made bad decisions? Absolutely, yes. But more than twice as many got fired because they couldn't make a decision and they were slowing everything down. And so that works itself out two ways. On the negative side, twice as many people got fired because they couldn't make a decision. And on the positive side, what we learned is that the CEOs say, once I get about 65 to 70% of the information that I think I'm going to need to make a decision, at that point, if there's no mitigating factors, I can go ahead and make the decision. So here's what you're doing. You're with your team. You have a big decision to make, and you can say, hey, everybody, as I look at all of this research that we're doing and what's coming in, it appears to me that this is going to be the best direction over here, option number A. So let's go ahead and start working on that. As of this meeting, we're going to choose option A and let's go for it. And if we find out option A isn't the best, we can make some adjustments along the way, but we don't want to kill ourselves by continuing to have a paralysis because we can't make a decision. A lot of people would call that analysis paralysis. If you need to just keep analyzing things all the time and it keeps you from making a decision, not a good day for you or for the people who are serving under you. So here's the bottom line. Here's what we can do to grow as people, as coaches, as peers, as family members, as people in our community. And that is be willing to make a decision and be willing to make a wrong decision. So here's how you would do that in such a way that it's not going to hurt you. It's actually going to be appreciated by those around you. You can say, hey guys, there's no right decision. There's no perfect decisions, but it appears that this is the direction we should go. And so let's take a risk together. Let's begin walking the journey down that direction. And let's just see how this goes. And so as of today, here's the decision we're making. And here's how we're going to begin to understand whether or not this was a wise decision or not. And you can tell them a few of the factors that you're going to look at. Okay, everybody in? Good, let's go for it. Well, if you could present it that way, the average person out there goes, you know what? Yeah, I wish we had more information too, but we don't. Let's just go for it and see where this whole thing shakes out. If you can begin to do that, it's going to revolutionize your life, especially if you're one of the people who kind of gets paralyzed all the time because they just can't make a decision. So, bottom line, personal application, think of one area in your life. It would be helpful for you to just make a decision. Just go ahead and do it. Make that decision today and see how it works out. And again, even if it's the wrong decision, the CEOs, the leaders of these companies, when they made a wrong decision, you know what they could do? They could go, stop the presses. This isn't working as well as we thought. Let's not do this. Let's change direction. And they could start a new direction. And everyone together was in on this because they had communicated well and they had been willing to step out there and actually make a decision. Hey, tomorrow we're going to look at one of the other 4 behaviors, and it has to do actually with the area of engaging with others. You say, well, yeah, Rob, I'm out on that one. I'm not an extrovert. Oh, it really has nothing to do with being an extrovert. It has to do with you actually caring. Do you care? Then you can engage. But more on that tomorrow. Hey, would you do me a huge favor? Jump over to iTunes.com. That's iTunes. And go on there, find this podcast, the LeaderTribe podcast, and subscribe to the podcast, and then give us an honest rating. If you will do that, it's amazing what happens. This podcast will work its way up the charts. It becomes exposed to more people. And at that point, we can help others in their own personal leadership development journeys. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. You can reach me at rob@leadertribe.com, rob@leadertribe.com. I look forward to serving you, and join us tomorrow for another Daily Dose of Growth. Hello, Leader Tribers. This is, in fact, Dr. Rob. I'm so thankful to be doing this podcast. Thank you for your kind remarks. The number one thing that you can do to help me at this point, if you like the LeaderTribe podcast, is to jump over to iTunes and go ahead, sign up, subscribe to the podcast so it can go into your feed, and then leave honest feedback. And especially if that feedback's good and if it's highly rated, if you rate the show well, then what happens is iTunes begins to move it right up the ladder and we can help more people. What do you mean help more people? Well, let's jump right back in. If you were here the first 2 days, you know we're looking at my personal favorite Harvard Business Review article of all time, 2017 May-June issue, where they talked about some behaviors that the most successful people have. 4 things that they do in their life over and over and over again. And while the article was originally written recognizing some of those behaviors in CEOs of companies, as mentioned and as we talked about the last couple of days, these are things that anyone can do. I can do them, you can do them, and we will have better, more productive lives. You want to be a better leader of yourself, a better friend, a better family member? Hey, then get these behaviors into your life. So in the first couple of days, we looked at the study itself, and then we looked at the first behavior, which is the manner in which we make decisions. But today, what we're going to look at is what the article called engaging for impact. Engaging for impact. The people who have the best impact in others' lives, you know what they do? They actually engage with the people. It could be stakeholders if it's a for-profit company, shareholders if it's a nonprofit. It could just be your friends and your family, your teammates. But when you engage with others, when you ask questions like this, hey, here's the goal we want to accomplish. Here's where we need to go. What does success mean to you? What would you suggest? And you start engaging other people. What happens is now they have some skin in the game. At that point, they're hoping that you succeed. The person who's the lone wolf who just goes into their own closet, works it all out and comes out, and then it's a failure, and people go like, why didn't you get some help on this? Well, here's what you and I can do every day. We can engage others for impact. We can engage them. Well, how would you do that? Well, the first thing that you can do is bring others along during the plan of whatever it is that you are hoping to do. Do it during the planning stages, not just during the execution. Don't wait until you're trying something, get out there and have it be a failure, and then start to say, oh no, help me, it's failing. Instead, in the planning stages, that's where people can really help you. Here's the problem. A lot of people in that engagement, they don't like to engage in conflict. Stop being afraid of conflict. Healthy conflict is awesome. Let me give you a quick example. I was with a leadership team of a wonderful organization, and they came, they were all talking with each other in one specific area. The leader of the organization is talking, and someone challenges him a little bit, and he goes back and forth, and they kind of just go, we'll just talk about this later. And I had the privilege of challenging them on that remark and saying, wait. If you talk about it later, now somebody doesn't know if they're in trouble. They don't know if all the honest opinions from the whole group have gotten onto the table. So let's go back there. And so as they went back and they looked at that a little bit deeper, here's what happened is all of a sudden there was true disagreements and the voices were raised a little bit and people started to get into it. But here's what's great. It was such a good team. The guy had done such a wonderful job over the year putting these people together that they all loved and trusted each other. They just disagreed. And so all of a sudden they're kind of getting into this little heated debate, but they weren't talking about each other. They were talking about the issues themselves. It was awesome. And I slammed my hand down on the table and I said, stop. And they all looked at me and I said, this is the first time this meeting's been worth attending. Okay, go ahead. Everybody laughed, but here's what happened. They were able to jump in and to really get into it, to bring their very best opinions. I will guarantee on that day, on that decision, there were no parking lot conversations. They weren't going out and saying, I can't believe that guy said we should do that. Why? Because they had the privilege of getting everything out on the table, because they were willing to engage with each other, even in areas that they did not agree. Hey, you know, one behavior that the CEOs that were the top did not engage in? That's trying to be liked by other people. They weren't people pleasers. They weren't the ones going around and trying to be seen a certain way. They were just being real. And they didn't have to worry if people liked them, because ultimately, if they were successful, then those same people in that company were going to be successful. And so people were going to like them because everybody wants to be on a winning team. Everybody likes success. One of the best parts about engagement is they found out that the leaders who would engage with others, they were much faster to be recognized and put into leadership positions. And so you can have somebody who, there's a fine leader, but they really don't engage. They're kind of a lone wolf. They don't really challenge other people. They're just kind of status quo. Even though they're smart, even though they're brilliant, they're not going to be recognized for CEO or to move up the leadership ladder as fast as other people. This is so true. I just can't tell you in the companies I've had the privilege of leading, if I have somebody who comes into my office and they say, hey, can we talk about something I really disagree with you on? Well, bring it. What do you got? And we go back and forth. half the time they're right. I think, you know what? I've never thought of it from that perspective. That's super helpful. Thank you very much. Other times, hey, they were just wrong. But the fact that they had the guts to come in and to talk about it and enter in that conversation, my respect went way up for them. And they were going to be much more likely to be promoted if I had a say in it. And since I was the leader of the company, I usually had a say in it. So friends, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to ask yourself a question. This is an internal question for you. Is there an area of your life where you've worried more about how you appeared to other people than actually making good decisions? Have you been a people pleaser, and can you just kind of go, whoa, 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 we're going to back that up, put the brakes on, and say, bottom line, if I'm just being real, what do I think we need to do there? And now, who do I need to go talk to find out how we can work on that together? Remember, if you're the leader of the team, everybody does get a voice, but not necessarily a vote. Are you feeling me? They get a voice, but not a vote. Because you don't vote on everything. It's not about consensus. It's about making the best decisions you can. And that is going to take engaging with other people. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. You're listening to the LeaderTribe podcast. The most helpful thing you could possibly do for me in the history of the world would be to jump over to iTunes and subscribe to the LeaderTribe podcast. If you could leave a review, that would be helpful as well. If we get lots of good reviews, then good things happen on this podcast and we can help more people in the long run. Anything that I can do to serve you, you can reach out to me, rob@leadertribe.com. That's rob@leadertribe.com. I try to get to every one of the comments. And I am so thankful that you're along on this personal leadership development journey. Congratulations, you did it again. Day 3, your daily dose of growth. Welcome to the LeaderTribe podcast, episode number 4. So thankful that you're along with us on this journey. We're looking at behaviors of successful people, things that they do over and over again. There's 4 of them that were discovered in a 10-year-long study that was reported on in Harvard Business Review. Specifically, the study was done with CEOs of companies, but they're things that we can apply to our lives every day. So today we're going to look at the third of those 4. It's what's called in the article, adapting proactively. Here's all you have to remember. The great people out there, the ones who are good leaders, the ones who are successful in life, they don't get stuck in a rut. Sometimes things do not go as planned. And so you have to adapt. You have to keep getting better. A lot of people have this idea in life, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, okay, there's some wisdom there, but here's something else. If you just let something go on and on and on and you never review, is there a better way to do it? Then you're going to get stuck in a rut, and that's not going to help you or the people around you. Hey, let me tell you why this is so important. If you'll remember all the way back to day 1, the very first episode of LeaderTribe, one of the things that we learned is that of the CEOs who had been super successful, 45% had had a major blow up in their leadership in the past. The types of things that you and I might say, man, they're never going to be able to lead at the highest levels. And instead of that sidelining them, instead of that ending their careers, what they did is they learned from it. They actually were more humble as a result, and they learned from their past mistakes, and that really helped them going forward because they could become more vulnerable. They can say, hey, I've really blown it here in the past. Here's what I learned, and let's not do that again. And so that's part of adapting and being proactive in doing it. As a matter of fact, the CEOs themselves, not just the people who are around them and they were asking to describe the ladies and gentlemen who are the top CEOs, but the CEOs themselves, when they asked them, what makes you such an effective CEO, most of them went to this area right away. And they talked about, well, you know what, there's a ton out there that's just not in the playbook. And if you're going to get paralyzed, you're not sure what to do, you have to adapt all the time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to try things that did not work. How are you going to adapt, and how can you do that all the time? How can you be thinking that direction? One of the really interesting points is that they found that people who had long-term perspectives were actually much, much better at this. So the CEOs who spent all of their time kind of saying, what's happening today? What's happening next week? What's happening this month? They were always running at this frenetic pace, and they weren't thinking about some of the longer term indicators. But those CEOs who were thinking longer term, who spent at least 50% of their time saying, hey, 6 months to a year from now, what do we need to have in the pipeline? How can we keep looking forward? They were the ones who would recognize patterns. They would recognize that the things that we're doing right now in our future are where our economy is right now. That's not necessarily where it's going to be in the future. And so they could adapt better because they were taking a longer term perspective. Real quick on this one, let me ask you, what is it in your life that you're saying 6 months from now, here's where I want to be. Here's the kind of person I want to be. Here's what I want to be doing. Some of the things that we can work on today and begin to think that way. As a matter of fact, there's a couple little YouTube videos out there on the internet, and in one of them I'm explaining this, that most people, if they can articulate, if you ask them, hey, where would you like to be a year from now? What's a great goal that you would either like to achieve as a person or as a family or as a company or as a team? And they can give that to you. And then you say, okay, the chances of that just happening by itself, about zero. But then how in the world do you begin to work on something that's that big that it takes a year to get done? It's really not that hard, but it has to be intentional. Here's what I mean. If that's where you want to be a year from now, then where do you need to be in 6 months? Okay, well, if you figure that out, here's where we need to be in 6 months. Now that you have that, if that's really where you need to be in 6 months, where do you need to be in 3 months? Hey, if that's where you need to be in 3 months, where do you need to be a month from now? If that's where you need to be in a month, where do you need to be next week? Hey, if that's where you have to get to for next week, what do you have to do tomorrow morning? You can see as you start to break it down that way, the chance of actually implementing this and seeing it come to pass it's exponentially higher odds that you're going to achieve your goal if you can start breaking it down, working from what's out there on the horizon, and starting with the end in mind, as Steve Covey would say, and then working your way back to come up with what I would call, it's not very scientific, but workable chunks. What's a workable chunk? Something that I can take this little chunk and start working on that today. And if you will do that and actually answer those milestones, where would I need to be in 6 months, 3 months? I think that would really help you. So longer term focus helps, but the number one area that the leaders who were the most successful, where they implemented this in their life, had to do with areas where they had failed. Yes, we all fail. We all make huge mistakes, and some of them we're really embarrassed about, especially if they're character issue type things. We even have shame, from that, and we're things that we're ashamed of, we don't want to talk about in our life. We all have failures, but you know what you can do is you can either learn from that, like my friend John Maxwell. He writes the book Failing Forward, and then another one that he came out with about 10 years later, and he says it's because he had made so many new mistakes. He called that one, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. Oh, I love that title. As a matter of fact, in one of the videos that John made when I was watching him make the video, he talked about a friend of his who says that I'm never down. His attitude, I'm never down. What do you mean you're never down? He said, I'm either up or I'm getting back up, but I'm not going to stay down. Well, with that kind of attitude, with that type of thing, saying, I'm going to adapt from where I am. I just had this major failure in my life. I'm going to adapt proactively. I'm not going to stay down. I'm going to change, and I'm going to learn from that. Those are the types of people who are champions in life. So LeaderTribers, let's go right to the bottom line today. Little daily dose of growth for you. Where's an area that you need to adapt? An area that's not going well, but somehow you just got in this routine of doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's really not working. So I want to ask you that personal question from me to you. What's an area of your life today that you think, you know what, I really need to adapt. I need to move a different direction. And you think, well, I don't really know what to do. Well, that's okay. A lot of these aren't in the playbook, but you know that what you're doing now isn't working. And so if you can just take a few moments and say, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to have to try a new direction in that. What should I start to do? And you're thinking, I don't know how to be decisive. Not a problem. Go back and listen to episode number 2, and you'll get some information that will be very helpful to you in those regards. Hey, could you do me a huge favor? Could you jump over to iTunes and subscribe to the LeaderTribe podcast? If you would do that and leave a review, that's going to help this move up in the rankings. And as a result, we'll be able to help more people every day. One little thing that we need to apply in our lives to become better in our own personal development. This is Dr. Rob. You can reach out to me at rob@leadertribe.com. That's Rob, R-O-B, at leadertribe.com. Any way I can serve you, I look forward to it. Thank you for joining us for your daily dose of growth. Hello, Leader Tribers. It's our 5th and final episode of the week. So thankful this first week is in the can. We've been looking all week at a great Harvard Business Review article. It's entitled What Great CEOs Do Differently. But as we discovered all along the way, it really has not as much to do with CEOs as it does with people, just with human beings. But they discovered that these CEOs who were very, very high performing, the ones who were just crushing it at the top of the Fortune 500, they had different behaviors than the people who were in the bottom companies in the Fortune 500 and those who had eventually lost their jobs. Specifically, 4 discoveries, 4 things that the CEOs did at the top, 4 things that we need to be doing, that we need to make more and more of a part of our lives. And those were, the first one had to do with decision making and being decisive, being willing to make a decision, even if you didn't have all the information that you had hoped to have. And the huge discovery that making a bad decision is often better than making no decision. Because if it's a bad decision, you can fix it. But if it's a no decision, it just slows everyone down. Secondly, engaging for impact, and the whole idea that these people will engage with others. They care enough to go out and engage with others. It didn't have as much to do with being an introvert versus an extrovert. It had to do with, will you engage with the people that you need to because you care for them, and you need to find out the people's expectations. But there was one area you never want to engage in, and that is engaging and spending the emotional energy to try to get other people to like you. It's just not worth the energy. And the CEOs who are the most effective, they didn't worry about that. They worried about doing a great job, because guess what? When you do a great job continually, people will like you. Number 3 was adapting proactively, and that was the whole idea of we all have failures in life. We all stumble. We all make mistakes. We're going to have to adapt when things aren't going right. In business, in family life, we're always going to be thrown curveballs. How are you going to adapt to that? And what are you going to do? And what did the great people do when they had the opportunity to either fall flat on their face or to get up and keep going? That was yesterday's podcast, and today the final one is reliability. Reliability. Hey, here's what the research showed. Are you ready for this? A stunning 94% of the strongest CEO candidates we analyzed scored high on consistently following through on their commitments. That's what reliability is. It's consistently following through on their commitments. What was really amazing is that when they went through the interview process, they were 2 times more likely to be chosen CEO if they happened to score high on that one area called reliability. But then once they had the job, and here it is, are you ready for this? They were 15 times more likely to succeed in their job as CEOs than the people who scored lower on the reliability scales. Now, something that was very interesting that they pointed out here is when you looked at all of the CEOs, including the CEOs who failed, who lost their jobs, 100% of the low-performing CEOs in the sample scored high on integrity, and 97% of them scored high on work ethic. And so if you have integrity and work ethic, those are just permission to play in today's day and age. The thing that you have to do is keep coming through. And if you do something, or if you say that you'll do something, then do what you said. Do what you said you would do. Hey, they found out that the people who are really good at this, one of the reasons they were good is because they set realistic expectations. I want to talk just a moment to all the optimists out there. That would include me. I'm a total glasses half full person. The people who have sort of a positive outlook on life, because we get ourselves into trouble in this area sometimes. Here's why. We don't set realistic expectations because optimists think things won't take nearly as long as they usually take. So I think, oh yeah, I'll help you with that report. And I look at something and I think, oh, that's going to take me about an hour. Well, 3 hours later when I'm still working on it, but optimists just automatically think we can just knock that out. And so one of the things that they found with the people, the leaders who were the most effective, is that they set realistic expectations. If you are a super optimist, if you are somebody who's very positive, one of the things that you might want to do is when you're putting into your calendar how long something's going to take into your daily agenda, you might want to double the time, or in some cases, triple the time. That would be a great planning skill for you. Hey, one other thing that came out in the study had to do with the people that surrounded these leaders. It ends up that those who were the most reliable and the strongest leaders, those who were the best, didn't mind surrounding themselves with strong people. You know what they didn't do? They didn't say, well, who's the most loyal to me around here? Or who's the person who's not going to disagree with me? They didn't mind if people disagreed with them. They wanted strong people around them because they wanted to get to the best solutions. And they wanted to know that those people were going to be reliable to them and they would be reliable to those people. It wasn't about loyalty. It was about reliability. So, hey, to be clear, there is no perfect mix for a leader, for a CEO. There's no perfect mix for somebody in a family, somebody in a neighborhood or in a business as far as getting the job done right every time. But here's what we can learn. If you will be the type of person who is reliable, the type of person who doesn't mind getting out there and making decisions, even if they're wrong, correcting them later, if the kind of person who even when you fail, you'll get right back up, and you are the type of person who will engage others and find out what their expectations really are, get the clarity and the empowerment you need, you are going to be a successful person in life. Hey, this is Dr. Rob at LeaderTribe. If you would do me a huge favor, and that's go to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast, and then leave an honest review on iTunes. The more reviews and the more subscriptions we have, the better that will help us to reach more people and that we can have the opportunity to share this daily dose of growth with others. One more little announcement here. What I want to do on Saturdays is take all of these shorter weekday podcasts and then just put them into one long podcast. And so it won't have all the bumper music on the intros and the outros, but what it will do is for people who want to listen to these podcasts, but not in 5 or 6 or 8 minute chunks, instead they want to listen to it all straight through in about 45 minutes. That's what the Saturday version of the podcast will be. And then on Sunday, I'm going to do something called For People of Faith Only. I have a real heart to encourage people, specifically people like pastors and spiritual leaders who are going out there as they're heading to work on Sundays. They're going to stand up in front of a bunch of people and they're helping to lead congregations. And I want to be an encourager and a helper to them. And so I'm going to try something called For People of Faith Only on Sundays. And that's going to be a shorter motivational podcast. And I look forward to doing that. So if you're a person of faith, feel free to jump in and listen to it. If you're not, enjoy your weekend. Well, everybody enjoy your weekend. But we will see you next Monday for another daily dose of growth. Thank you so much. Much love. I'm out.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the LeaderTribe podcast. For all the free bonuses and growth articles, join the tribe. It's free. Just head on over to LeaderTribe.com to sign up, and we'll see you tomorrow for another daily dose of growth.